Hello, Canada. Happy Monday and good morning to everyone tuning in coast to coast to coast to Hangouts. Back to recap what was a pretty eventful week in Major League Soccer and have some spicy news, some exciting news, whatever adjective you want to use. There's going to be a bit of that coming up on the Hangout today. Joined by the boys, Gareth Wheeler and Oliver Platt. My name is Adam Jenkins. Great to have everyone with us today. Ollie, late night for you last night. Well, late night for all three of us last night with that match going into PKs. You feeling ready to go, ready, energetic and spry?
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm just grateful there was no storm. When I heard the broadcast mention that clouds are on the way before the TFC game, I was fearing the worst. So I'll take what I can get.
I prefer 9 a.m. games to 11 p.m. Eastern time matches. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Sacrifice the quality on the pitch for a sleep schedule adjustment. I'm with you there. Ollie, what do you think the latest they would have kicked off would have been? Like, I don't think they've ever had to deal with that. There was a match earlier in the tournament where it was a pushback a little bit, but you think it would have kicked off if it was even close to midnight?
I think so, right? Because, it's not great for ratings, but it's not getting any warmer as the night goes on, so it's probably better playing conditions. I think they probably would have just played. I don't know.
There's no fans. There's no other considerations. That's why they're there. They wouldn't have been able to gone anywhere else. So I think they just would have played.
2 a.m. kickoff would have been amazing, wouldn't it?
Nope. Not at all. Not at all.
You're talking to a guy that just got back from a camping trip who has no sleep cycle right now. So I'm with the all-nighters. All right, guys, let's get into it. I think we're going to start with the Canadian Premier League. Obviously, that's a big talking point for a lot of people. Desperate for updates, as you would be. Fans are excited. They want to know a little bit more about when this return to play is going to happen. We can't give you anything concrete, but we can give you this. The commissioner of the Canadian Premier League, David Klanikin, will be joining One Soccer on Wednesday. Time to be determined, but the commissioner will be joining us to provide an update of sorts on what's going on with the league, Ollie. So that's got to be exciting news. I didn't even have to ask you for a vague update today. We actually have some news. So what can we expect, do you think, from the commissioner in terms of steps forward and how close we might be to something?
I don't know, Adam. I'm off the hook today. The update was yours to give, so I won't speculate. No,
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything that we may be adding.
No, you nailed it. I think it's, as I've been saying for the past couple of weeks, we're getting closer. We're in the final stages. Hopefully, the commissioner has some updates. Obviously, fans have been anxious for on Wednesday, so we'll see.
And there is a bit of an update from you, Ollie. You're quarantining, and it's not because you're showing symptoms of COVID-19. What can you tell us about that?
We should probably confirm that I am healthy. No, I've been told to start quarantining because I could be going somewhere soon. So make of that what you will.
Make of that what you will. Okay, so now
somewhere soon.
Somewhere soon. Location to be determined. Length of stay to be determined. But you're going somewhere, and that's got to be good to have something to look forward to. Okay, so that's the vague update. It's a big update, but it's still pretty vague. There is some concrete news to report though and reflect on right away from the Canadian Premier League. Literally 5 minutes ago, as we were counting down to air, York 9 releasing a press release on the signing of a Spanish striker, Alvaro Rivero. Gareth, the initial reaction to York 9 adding another star-studded player to their lineup.
Well, look, there's going to be no shortage of attacking talent, right, on this York 9 team this coming season, but it's just until we understand what the format of whatever the competition is going to look like, then I think you'll get a better feel about what this group will be all about, because it's something that let York 9 down at times last year. They just didn't have a consistent finisher. So if they can find one or two of those players to add to their team, they should be an improved outfit, shouldn't they? Like, they should be considered among the best teams in the Canadian Premier League. But until you understand the format, who's in, who's out for all the teams across the league, it's very difficult to say what exactly this means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's an interesting player. He's ex-Real Madrid youth player, so he's played at a high level coming through the ranks. Been in the Spanish lower divisions more recently, so you don't really know what to expect with these players coming in internationally. But York 9 feel good about their international recruitment. I think they feel good about their depth as well, and as we've seen at MLS, that's going to be really important if we do find ourselves playing in a short space of time. A lot of matches. A bit more on York 9. Yako, who we mentioned last week, they were still trying to get him in. he will not be joining the club anymore. He's going to be released. Actually, I think shortly after we went to air last week, they got the call from his agent asking for a release for family reasons, just because the move wasn't working out because of all the restrictions around right now. Brian Lopez and Nicholas Hamilton. Lopez won't play for this club in 2020, but I think they're going to try and hold on to him and potentially look for a loan deal and bring him back next year. And Hamilton, they are still trying to get him in the country. And obviously they had reason for encouragement with Halifax getting Alex Marshall into Canada last week. So we'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, it's still a lot of movement as we get closer to a hopeful season.
Exactly. And some of these teams are going to need players, Ollie and Adam. And my understanding is that, there's that link with Toronto FC2 players. And I'm really interested to see where some young Canadian players can go. It's going to be much easier for these teams right now. Obviously, there's a massive commitment by the Canadian Premier League to give young Canadian players a chance. That's where my focus is. Where can some of these intriguing Canadian players get games this year? And I fully expect multiple Toronto FC2 players or development players to sign on across the Canadian Premier League and feature prominently in this competition, whatever it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Adam's still
first mute. First mute. I've been so good. I had a good segue too, and now it's all out the window. Speaking of young Canadian players, we're going to move on to Major League Soccer now. But just one final reminder: Commissioner of the CPL, David Klanikin, joining One Soccer on Wednesday. Stay tuned at One Soccer socials for timings and more details. But CPL fans can look forward to something coming on Wednesday from the commissioner. But let's move on to Major League Soccer. We talked about the PKs, but we would be remiss to not lead off our MLS coverage without talking about another fantastic performance from Thomas Hasal last night for the Vancouver Whitecaps, including the gif of the tournament. I don't know that we're going to top that. A little header right into the camera. Ultimately, the Caps comeback, or the Caps performance in this tournament, that was perhaps a little bit longer than many would have expected with the lineup they started this tournament with, coming to an end against Sporting KC in penalties. Gents, do we want to start with Hasal, start with the Caps performance? Where would we like to go, Gareth? I'll give the floor to you.
Well, I think it's appropriate that if there is some Canadian Premier League news coming on the horizon, that all three Canadian MLS teams have bowed out of Mlsisback. So it's a perfect transition to keep Canadian soccer fans engaged, because we're not sure what the MLS regular season is actually going to look like coming up in the next few weeks. But I think that there is positives and negatives for all three Canadian teams at this Mlsisback. But the biggest surprise outfit, and I just love watching the resiliency of the Vancouver Whitecaps last night. And whether it's a third string goalkeeper from Saskatoon and Thomas Hasal playing well, making 8 saves last night, not conceding during the run of play, coming in a very difficult situation, spelling Max Crepeau. He's a wonderful story, but I think the Whitecaps in general, with so many players out of this tournament, going out through injury, that Mark DeSantos dug deep in typical Mark DeSantos fashion, and he joined us in our One Soccer conversations inside the game. And he discussed being down in Brazil and being a massive underdog and working with teams that didn't have the players that other teams would have, like a young Marquinhos he's going up against. But his teams regularly came up with results. And if I'm a Vancouver Whitecaps fan and I see the resiliency of a squad that's thin, maybe doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the talent of other teams, but digging in and fighting the way that they did, that gives me as a Whitecaps supporter a ton of encouragement that Mark DeSantos will be able to get every little bit out of whatever this Whitecaps team looks like going forward. I just love their spirit, love their fight. I think their style of football is more conducive to longevity or having some kind of success in tournament play rather than regular season MLS action. But I think there's enough there to get people excited and reinvigorated again, right? Like any fan base, you want to just come away with some kind of belief. And I think that each and every one of the members of that staff and that team can go home with their head held high, because I just thought the effort, throughout this tournament was exceptional. And they should be really proud of what they were able to accomplish at this tournament.
Yeah, did any club need that is like enlightenment more than the Caps? Because obviously it's been a tumultuous past couple months with Panis, and then you come into the tournament with a bare bones roster for the most part, missing some serious star power. So did any fan group across MLS, not just Canada, need to see that resiliency from their team more than Vancouver?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, actually. We mentioned it before the tournament that Vancouver at this Mlsisback competition, I don't think we're ever realistic contenders to win it, given all the absences and given the season they had last year. But I asked the question, could they just get some kind of, not an actual win, but some kind of winning feeling out of it, in terms of just showing some battle, showing some resiliency, and giving their fans something to kind of get behind and be proud about again after all that's gone on over the past 18 months. And I think they achieved that. So there's a lot of questions still to be asked about this team and how they're going to move forwards and how they're going to rebuild and be competitive in the long run. And we'll come on to that. But to put that aside, I just think they kind of showed the effort and the togetherness and the belief in each other that's how you get fans back on side and supporting the team and feeling good about the team again.
Canadians playing as well, Adam, just really quickly, like last night, Canadian international Russell Teibert. I mean, the amount of running that he did, I'm not sure there's been a player that's run in one game at Mlsisback more than Teibert. And people will say, well, how does Teibert stay in the national team picture? It's that. He brings that intangible. He can run and run and run and just continues it. I thought he was amazing just in terms of the effort and work rate. Derek Cornelius didn't start this tournament at center back, but he sure looks a fit, doesn't he? On the left side of center back, like the difference between him and Kamiri, it's night and day for me. Another young player who will be part of John Herdman's setup, and Thomas Hassel. I mean, another young Canadian player that I still think he needs to get stronger. I think his push-offs, just his movement in terms of his diving, needs some work there. But he's 21. And it was proved to be a good shot stopper, and that was Max Crepeau's rep, right? Like, if you look at that, if I'm Max Crepeau, when he comes back, whenever it comes back, there's no guarantees in this league. And if a young player takes full advantage of an opportunity like that, he's Canadian as well. It's good on him. I'm really going to look forward to seeing how Hassel maybe takes advantage of this time and maybe becomes the number 2 or the number 1 here in the coming months for the Vancouver Whitecaps. He's earned it by virtue of his play. And that's what I love to see, young players earning their time and making the most of it.
Yeah.
Ali, has Hassel gotten a call from John Herdman yet, you think?
Well, the goalkeeping position's looking pretty good for the future now, right? You've got Marco Carducci in there as well. You got a few young guys around the world who have got some promise. So there's a few contenders there. We've been talking about whether Max Crepeau was the long-term successor to Milan Borjan, but there's a few players who could stake a claim. Just to add on Cornelius, I think this guy is one of the most underrated Canadian players around. He plays great against the USA at BMO Fields, gets dropped for the game in Orlando. Didn't really understand that decision. Played well, I thought, when he did get the chance for the Whitecaps last year. Wasn't in their lineup at the start of this tournament. I'm genuinely wondering, is he bad in training or something? Because he seems to turn out well whenever he gets the chance and doesn't necessarily get as many chances as he should. So I hope he's done enough to stick in the lineup in these past couple of games.
I think you can play on the left, Ollie, too. Yeah. It's a different profile.
Left footer, it's nice. So. Yeah.
All right, let's chat some TFC. There was I shouldn't say no expectations, very little expectations for the Whitecaps going in, but yet they were the last Canadian team to be eliminated from this tournament. Toronto FC earlier in the match, finally dropping one to NYCFC. And guys, I don't think we're shaking the boat too much or rocking the boat too much to say that they looked flat. They looked completely exhausted up and down the pitch. Michael Bradley did not look very strong, especially on that opening goal from NYC in the first 5 minutes. Just laid an egg with the clearance attempt. The rest of the team just kind of fell asleep ball watching, and Quentin Westberg didn't have a great game either. So lots to dive into there. Do we just put it down to overall team fatigue, especially with the late arrival to Orlando? Wheels, where do you look first right away after that performance?
I think team fatigue is a little bit of an excuse, to be honest with you. And by the way, it's a little bit harsh. The Vancouver Whitecaps, the last team stand. It was by virtue of the schedule, Adam. They all got at the exact same fit.
A fact is a fact, okay?
I look at Toronto FC, and I'm going to call it like I saw it. It was a bad night at the office, a really bad night at the office where they were slow, they were sluggish, their passing was off, they were disjointed, nothing worked. And even the best teams across Major League Soccer, the Premier League, the Bundesliga, like teams have bad games. And last night, it just happened at the wrong time against a very young, athletic, fast New York City FC team to me. The goals conceded, there was 2 goals in this tournament that I really don't like that they conceded. It was the second one against DC United off a set piece, and the first goal by New York City FC off a set piece. I mean, these are goals that were critical when they were scored against, and Toronto FC for the first time all season were playing from a deficit. I just think that they came out flat. Look, New York City FC, they played 2 9 a.m. games as well. No team in this tournament is in impeccable condition. You can't use any of those as excuses. They simply didn't come out and perform as a group last night. I think that's ultimately what's so disappointing. They are a better team than New York City FC, but if you watch last night and had no further knowledge of those teams, do you think that New York City FC were playing on another planet to Toronto FC? They were that much better. So back to the shop. Greg Vanney has some work to do, and I think some players inside that room need to kind of look deep, and they've done it before and responded. I have no reason to question whether they'll do it again, but last night was not a good look whatsoever for TFC.
No, it wasn't. I'm never going to accuse Toronto FC of not wanting to win, but I think there are varying levels of how much you want to win. And last night, I just thought NYCFC looked far more engaged and far more dialed in for that game. And I do wonder, with all the trepidation that TFC had about going to this tournament, the things that are much bigger than football that are happening off the field right now as well, that some of their players have been very involved in. I just wonder if maybe the mentality, and I think it's backed up by the team selection during the group stage, was more, let's get our regular season points, and then anything else after that is kind of a bonus, right? Like, I don't know if they really came into this tournament thinking we have to get our hands on this trophy. That is my feeling. I just thought NYCFC looked a far more engaged team last night in every way.
Right. One thing I will say, I talked to some people down there with Toronto FC, and they really like the setup of the tournament. And they think that there's something to build off of there. And for me, if I look at Mlsisback as a whole, wouldn't it be a great way to get rid of those late February, early March games in Major League Soccer and have like a neutral site tournament to kick off the year? And you can include some regular season games. It's just a way to avoid Montreal playing in the Big O. Toronto FC playing on ice, essentially. I think there's something to the format, and there's something to work with there. And Toronto FC, they enjoyed the format. Look, I think that Ollie and I documented it over the course of the tournament. The one area we both question, Ollie, is whether the team has enough width. And when teams press them and make them play a little bit more narrow, take away space, TFC showed an inability over the course of the tournament to switch the ball quickly and go out the other way and take advantage of space. So they're either going to need to find some players that can play and provide that width, or they're going to have to kind of maybe change their tactics a little bit to play in a little bit of a different way. But Greg Vanney, if he's not the best head coach in Major League Soccer, he's top 3, top 5, whatever you want to call him, proven track record of victories. So I have no doubt that he has his thoughts on his team right now and how he'll go about getting the best of them. And sorry, Adam, just the biggest win of this tournament is Ayo Akinola for Toronto FC. He was out through a hamstring injury, but I mean, he looks ready to step into a much more prominent role with or without Josie Altidore available.
Well, that was going to be the last thing I asked you guys about TFC before we moved on. And we had talked about picking a stand-up performer for each team. No question it was him. But Ollie, what I'll ask you instead is, does it show you how valuable or how good of a tournament he had that they seem to really miss someone who before this tournament wasn't really in consideration?
Yeah, in a way, because as we all said, they do lack a bit of width on that left-hand side. And I think both from the winger position and from a striker position, they just lack someone who can get in behind, right? And I thought there was basically no consequences for NYCFC just pressing TFC all over the park, because they knew they were never going to get beaten in behind. They were always going to have time to recover, even if TFC did beat their initial press. So a player like Akinola or Josie Altidore was sorely missing. Sometimes you can compensate for that by having Pozuelo up there and having the wingers kind of play that role and get in behind. That didn't happen. And it looks like Pablo Piatti is, again, more of a kind of between the lines player. He looks more like an upgrade on Nicolas Benezet rather than, a different type of player to Benezet. So that's still an issue. And they cycled through a few different options on the left. And I don't think anyone really staked their claim to that position. So it's going to be something that continues to, be debated, and players are going to continue to get chances there, I think, on that left-hand side.
All right, last but certainly not least, got to get our thoughts on the Montreal Impact, who bowed out of this tournament after Tesho Akindele, the Canadian, scored a goal for Orlando City SC that put them through. Montreal Impact, if we want to talk about chronological timelines and who was out first, who was out last, Wheels, they were the first ones to depart from this tournament. But overall, big picture, how would you evaluate Tyrianri and Montreal Impact in this tournament?
Nothing but facts from Adam Jenkins. And it was a gift of a goal that the Montreal Impact gave away. And look, Orlando City have come to this tournament and they look like a prepared, well-organized team. And they played better than Montreal Impact, but the Impact were able to hang in there. And a couple massive positives that Tyrianri realized he could play with 4 at the back, which is good because he is an 18-year-old stud of a center back in Louis Binks. Like this guy can play. I'm so impressed by what I saw in a teenager, a player that they brought over from Spurs. I thought he was excellent. Just the issues, and Ollie and I touched on them earlier in this tournament. They're the same ones. How to get the best of Bojan and Tyler? What position do you play them? It's an unbalanced squad. Do they have enough goals up front? And Piet and Wanyama, I'm not convinced that they can play in the same midfield together. Samuel Piet just making these runs forward. Like, no, he's a sick. Like I keep on banging my head against the wall here because it should be Wanyama making those runs, but he's the one that's holding deeper. So there's some balance issues there, but in terms of a formation that Henry can utilize and some good performances by young players, it ticks both those boxes.
Yeah, there was some progress there for sure. I still think there are more questions than answers with this Impact side. Again, I'm only echoing Wheels here, but where are the goals going to come from? Kyoto was a positive, but there wasn't a lot aside from him up front. And yeah, this Wanyama and Piet situation, and I hear a lot of people say that they can't play together. I'm not sure that's true because I think Wanyama needs a guy like Piet to do his running for him at this stage in his career. From what I've seen of Wanyama so far, but I would just like to see them swapped. Let Piet protect the back 4 and let Wanyama play a bit further forward and kind of connect the midfield to the attack. I think we saw that when they played the back 3 in the first game, and Wanyama had, I think, nearly 80 passes in that game. I thought it was his best game of the tournament. He was very involved. Since he's moved to that deeper lying role, he's not putting up the Michael Bradley numbers of having 60, 70, 80 passes a game. He's at like 45, 50. So I don't think he's really having much success in terms of that deep lying role of dominating the ball and bringing the ball out of the defense. So if he's not having success there, then why not move him into a more advanced position where he can help the attack a bit more? So that doesn't really make sense to me, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops and how Henry adjusts. But yeah, I still think there are more questions than answers when it comes to this Impact side when I look at a potential playoff race in the coming months.
That was where I wanted to go to next, is what is next for these 3 Canadian MLS sides. They still have a shot at the CONCACAF Champions League by virtue of the Canadian Championship, which as of this moment, the plan is for it to still be played this season. But that's the extent of what we know. Now we're back into a holding pattern. Do these Canadian sides just play each other while the American sides do their own thing because of what's been going on with the border? Obviously, with the Toronto Blue Jays not allowed to play their home games here, can't imagine they will allow 3 teams to play up north, especially with how strict and rightfully so Dr. Henry's been in British Columbia. So, gentlemen, leaning into any conversations you have been having with people in and around the varying Canadian clubs, what do you think is the most realistic step forward now for Major League Soccer teams in Canada? Ollie, first word to you.
Well, yeah, we saw the reporting in The Athletic that all the indications are that plans are in place to continue the season. Firstly, I will say that it's been a job well done so far in the bubble. Aside from the cases that were brought in from other markets, the bubble's been clean, knock on wood. So that's been done well. I have 2 big questions going forwards, though. Firstly, is just a question of whether the United States is ready for in-market games, given we're still talking about 50 to 60,000 cases a day in the US. For comparison, the Bundesliga came back with about 500 cases a day, the Premier League with about 1,500. Obviously smaller countries, but still a big disparity there. What happened to Dallas? What happened to Nashville? What's happened to the Miami Marlins this morning? That's not good signs in terms of restarting in market. So I have some concerns there. And then, as you mentioned, there's obviously the question following the Blue Jays having to relocate of whether the Canadian teams are going to be able to be involved. So I'm not sure what the answers are here, but I do think there are some big questions to answer if we're going to see this MLS season continue.
Yeah. And 18 games, is 18 games, Ollie?
I mean, that's so, yeah.
16, 18, that's ambitious.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd be curious about, and football's a little bit different this way, but unlike baseball, you can go in and out of a city in the same day. So essentially, you can control what the team goes through. You can land, essentially get on the team bus, go straight to the facility, play again, then go home. The biggest concern all along, and we're seeing it in baseball, it's like certain teams and players are taking things more seriously than others. Every market has their own separate reality in terms of how they're trying to combat this pandemic. And it's just those added unknown variables that led to FC Dallas and Nashville having to bow to the competition. That's where the element of the unknown is. Coming in and out, as long as you're controlling who's in and who's out and where they're going, then I don't see that being an issue, to be honest with you. But it's just the unknown about what's happening on the ground in their own cities. And by all accounts, the Canadian teams have done an exceptional job taking care of their players. There's a lot of confidence within all of those clubs, but there's less confidence about what's going on and what has gone on leading up to Mlsisback in other markets. Perhaps they learned their lessons, the likes of Dallas and Nashville. Maybe not. We're about to find out, but there's some serious work that needs to be done. And obviously the health of the players, it's always going to be put first. And that's top of mind for all three Canadian club teams.
Just to wrap this up before we talk about some final rumors and news of the day, Wheels, you brought this up earlier. I just want to give you a chance to share your thoughts here. Obviously, mission accomplished for Major League Soccer right now with Mlsisback. And they would like to be able to continue the season, but should they not be able to continue a regular season, maybe they play some friendlies or what have you. But do you think Major League Soccer will be happy with what they were able to get accomplished? Knock on wood, this tournament completes without a hitch.
Yeah, I honestly think the tournament has been a success, minus the 9 a.m. games. I mean, that is consistently across the board the one sticking point for players, but they're on to something here. A tournament, it's very difficult to keep regular engagement across any expansive regular season, virtually in any North American sport. Like baseball 162, convincing people that 82 games matter in the NHL. Like it's tough, but if you can add a tournament format, add that layer to kick off the season, I think the MLS can maybe stand out from the rest in having that added carrot dangled. If you add with the CONCACAF Champions League expanded, you can add an extra spot in that on a regular basis. I think there's something there, Ollie. So overall, if you add some fans in the future when that's allowed, and you do it at the right time of year where you can have games consistently spread out over the course of the day, it's not stinking hot. I think that there's something really likable about this tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting because it has really given these leagues a chance to basically have a blank canvas and try things that they might not ordinarily maybe want to try, given that sports fans can be quite traditional. So it'll be interesting to see, as some of these slightly wealthier leagues get started. You'd think the NBA has some pretty cool stuff planned, and it's been interesting to watch. Just what the kind of things that the leagues are trying when they have this opportunity to do so.
Is anyone going to miss the virtual advertising on the pitch? The big Adidas logo at center? Because I won't be sad to see that go.
As long as they're not muting out swear words. Like that's the one thing that it's really bothered me, because anyone that goes to any game, the guy sitting next to you might be swearing his face off when you go. It's part of the sporting experience. Stop sanitizing it. Just if you want to create an authentic atmosphere, then keep it authentic. All the cuss words and all.
It was past midnight last night watching the Whitecaps anyway. So
no rules. Yeah, no, that's a good shout. Okay, guys, only a couple minutes left, but the last thing we wanted to touch on today was some reports and some rumors across CONCACAF that the World Cup qualifying format has been decided and that it will be announced very, very soon. One of the more consistent rumors, and one that we even saw Taylor Twellman comment on today, was that CONCACAF World Cup qualifying will be 8 teams with the top 5 already qualified, and the remaining 3 needing to qualify with a pre-tournament, October to June, 14 games, and all of that is good news for Team Canada because they will be involved in the World Cup qualifying cycle. Ollie, what have you heard that agrees or disagrees with what Taylor Twellman is reporting, and what are your thoughts on this proposed rumor and tournament style?
Yeah, well, this obviously isn't confirmed, and hopefully we'll hear more soon. But, there's been reports out there in Central America which kind of match what Taylor Twellman reported, but just a bit more of a complete view. And that's that every team is going to be involved. It seemed like one proposal that was going around was teams 9 to 35 play in groups. 9 group winners go through. Those 9 group winners join Canada, El Salvador, and Curacao, if I remember correctly. They play a couple of knockout rounds to then get in with the other, to get 3 teams into this octagonal with the top 5 ranked sides, right? So that would be a setup that I think is pretty great for Canada. You would essentially have to win 2 knockout rounds against lower ranked teams, and you'd be in the final stage of World Cup qualifying and have a really, have essentially a full hex, but in this case an octagon, as an opportunity to qualify for the World Cup. So that would be super exciting for all of us to have Canada in that final stage of World Cup qualifying. It's been too long. And yeah, a great opportunity for this team to start living up to the potential it has.
Yeah, it sounds like this suits Canada very nicely. It probably doesn't hurt that the president of CONCACAF happens to be Canadian. That finally, when it comes to these decisions that are being made, I think that there is a strong Canadian voice at the table. And I'm not talking about preferential treatment. I'm talking about not being overlooked or thought about, secondarily here. So everything sounds like it's on point. And I think it only made sense, Ollie, to have 8 teams play and vie for the final World Cup spots at the end. I think that was the only equitable or most fair way to do it. How you get there, I mean, this is the best format, then so be it. But I was always about having 8 teams during that final phase.
Yeah, I think so. And there's still some challenges there. I don't know that there's enough dates right now. You'd maybe need to look at playing some 3-game windows. You might need to look at getting some extra windows in. So there's still things to work out, I think. But that's the rumor that's going around, and it makes sense.
Anyone care to disagree with me that Alphonso Davies being one of the region's best stars right now would help make those decisions for Canada be a little bit more beneficial?
Sure. Yeah, like CONCACAF is got to get attention on its games, right? And one of the reasons why I think they want to keep this final round, having all the teams in the same group, is you want those USA-Mexico games, you want the Costa Rica, Mexico, and USA games. You want the big teams and the big stars playing each other, and right now we've probably got more stars in CONCACAF than we've ever had.
Yeah, and at the same time, I feel like under Victor Montagliani that CONCACAF has their ducks in a row. They want to grow they want to grow their television properties. It's not just about individual gain here. It's about the entire federation and what's in the best interest of all member nations. And I think that we're seeing progress. We're seeing much more transparency, and decisions that actually make common sense will go a long way to gaining the trust back of soccer fans across CONCACAF, really.
Well, certainly a developing story we're keeping an eye on. And speaking of developing stories, one final reminder before we say goodbye. Wednesday, Canadian Premier League Commissioner David Klanikin will be joining One Soccer for an exclusive update on the return to play and what's been going on with the CPL in previous months. So you're going to want to make sure you subscribe to One Soccer on YouTube, like these videos if you're liking them, and subscribe to us or follow us on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest news and announcements. Some great stuff coming out of our social and digital departments. Gentlemen, good half hour. Sad to see all 3 Canadian teams bow out of Major League Soccer is back, but it's the way things go, and we're back in this holding pattern. So we'll cross our fingers for Wednesday.
We're on the crew.
Positive news.
Ollie and I are both on the Columbus crew and Sporting Kansas City. Both their teams
still alive.
Ollie.
We're still going.
I was going to give you a chance to pump your tires, but I do enough of that on these shows. So
I can handle
that's
that.
where we're going to leave it today. I know, Wheels. You know the love is there. Okay, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe, follow, do all that stuff if you haven't already. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you very soon from the One